guys, and welcome back to another special episode of the Backwater Entrepreneur Podcast and Show, the show that guides your business from the backwaters to the global marketplace. My name is Jack, I'm your host, and it's time for another special episode. In special episodes, as I told you before, I bring about guests, and today we're outside of our normal studio. We're in Belgrade, and for the first time, I have a guest who's not a native speaker in English, but has lived in America for quite a number of years, and is a kind of a special entrepreneur because even though his business is local, it's an online business, and he has been struggling with so many obstacles along the way that for everybody listening out there, you can identify with the struggles, obstacles, and how to overcome them. So my guest is Vuk Guberinic. Vuk, hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so first of all, who is Vuk, and what's your background? So have you always been in IT?
No, I haven't. Actually, this is something that I kind of grew into. But when you ask me who is Vuk, if you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I would tell you, a crazy young guy trying to change the world. But today, with all of this compressed experience, I would say a father first, and then an entrepreneur coming from Serbia with some background from the West.
Oh, fantastic. And basically, the reason that you're on the show, so you have a startup business. It's called CarGo, and it's a kind of a version of Uber, a local version of Uber. So can you? I see the look.
Yeah.
So
sure.
can you turn on that? So who came first?
Yeah, well, Uber came first, but before Uber, it was Lyft. So we looked at the Western market and what's going on with the ride-sharing space, how it's changing the way that people commute and move around the city from point A to point B. They rely on an app that connects them to a driver, who not necessarily needs to be a taxi, but a licensed driver. So I first used those services back in the States about 4 years ago, and I realized how cool it is and how many things you cannot worry about regarding the payments and the ease of use of hailing a ride. So I wanted that kind of experience in my hometown.
And basically, we know that Uber is kind of spreading worldwide and it's moving from country to country. So what made you start a local business? So weren't you worried about, for example, Uber or Lyft coming to Serbia before you kind of succeeded, or even if you succeeded?
Not really. It's interesting that when I came back home, so 4 years ago, I first emailed Uber and I said, look, guys, you need to be in Serbia. Belgrade is a huge city and I can make it happen. There was no reply, so I decided to make my own. No, I'm not afraid because the market, and we can talk about any city in the world, is big enough for 2 or 3 players. So in any industry, you can have Coke, you can have Pepsi, and then you can have many other drinks like Red Bull, who came in and stole the show. So thinking about that, and knowing the local market and the local needs, we thought about customizing and localizing the software enough to be competitive and to start early. So start before everyone else decides to show up.
Okay, so let's talk about the beginning. So what are kind of the major obstacles in even starting this type of business in an environment which is in media, we say that we're very progressive and very kind of baby boomers in accepting digital innovation, at least among young people. But so what are the main obstacles in starting a business in an environment which is not the Western world or the US?
Well, a few things, but let's say that you have those things in mind when you start. We knew that we're not addressing a 300 million population market. We're addressing, up to 20 million when we talk about the Balkans, and that was fine with us. I think it's still a decent sized market that our product can spread on. The other thing is a local potential of and acceptance of technology. So we started back in 2015. That was, with a lot of positive things in mind that we're gonna, get out there and make it happen, and everyone is gonna love what we do, and that everyone will be ready to start some payments online. But that was for us the biggest obstacle. I would say, in order to grow faster, to scale. I think something that put us above and aside from everyone else was also slowing us down, meaning that we started the ride-sharing app that had no cash as a form of payment, and we still don't have it. So we took a road less traveled, so to say, because we wanted to really emphasize the importance of having the whole experience, from ordering a ride to just exiting the car without a feel of transaction. And I'm sure since you tried their service, you noticed that it works just like it works in Beijing or New York or South Africa, anywhere. So we made the experience pretty much the same when it comes to some standard things that you want to see in a ride-sharing app.
And yeah, that's kind of the main obstacle in the sense of starting a business which is cashless, in a sense that you require online payment and automatic payment, and so in a legislative environment which is only beginning to think about accepting and legislating online payments as for businesses. Now, I know that you had some issues with that in the beginning. So even you started something with PayPal, and you had some issues with the local government. So can you reflect on that? And basically, how much energy does it also involve, not just putting in the business, but also on the lobbying side, on changing basically laws of the country in order to make your business happen?
A lot of energy, to put it simple, but I'll go back and explain for those of you that haven't heard. Basically in Serbia, I think everybody heard we had an issue, and we ended up in court. National Bank of Serbia sued us. We're still in court. I think we're going to win, even if it takes 10 years. But what happened? So we wanted a transaction to happen in real time. And 2015 in Serbia, you had no option to charge something online and get feedback that the customer paid for the service in real time. So in our scenario, that the customer would need to buy credits and then get a ride, and the only way to do it was through PayPal, which was available in the country because the national bank said, yeah, it's okay, finally we have it, and so on. But it turned out that it wasn't really all that legal to sell stuff to local residents through PayPal, because PayPal is not a registered e-money entity in Serbia. They are in the EU though. So of course, not knowing who our customers are, meaning that we don't know if they're residents or not. And quite frankly, we don't care. We let the service go, and we started processing transactions because that was the only way we had. We also wanted to include other ways, and we did soon after that. But we still kept PayPal, and we still have it today. So we got in trouble because the taxi lobby pointed out what we're doing, and we had all kinds of inspections. We had to prove that everything we do is right and by the law, by the book. We had to explain what PayPal is to the authorities. We told them that you can't print PayPal, come on. And yeah, that was it. In the end, they were on our side, and that they kind of realized what we're doing, and that every transaction is visible in the system. So in and out, since it's electronic. And they kind of let us go. They let us off the hook. But they still keep a close eye on what we do. Since then, we introduced like 5 more different types of payments, including processing of the credit cards through the app.
And basically, the issue was that PayPal, who offers transactions in various different currencies, doesn't support Serbian dinar, and the local law was that the resident transactions cannot be in foreign currency.
The interesting thing about that, they were not, because PayPal took the dinar and converted it to euros. It gave us euros, and then we converted back to dinars, lost 7% on each transaction, and then we gave dinars to our partners' drivers.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I wanted to say basically the way that you put money in to PayPal and take it out is only available within the local currency, and it's only the PayPal's fault that it's like processing and changing money just for its own purposes.
Yes, that's because they can. We were in touch with them as well. They did not plan to get e-money license in Serbia anytime soon. I think since then we became the biggest merchant on PayPal and Payoneer in the meantime out of Serbia due to the amount of transactions that we processed. But so far I think we did 50 times more transactions than when we were in trouble. So I think in the end we're going to win. And then we're going to shut it down.
Well, that's cool, because the last time I heard about your issues with PayPal, I heard about some humongous kind of fees that you had to pay, or the money that you couldn't pull out of PayPal.
That was the second issue we had. It was PayPal's sister company or daughter company called Braintree. We had to open up a company in London in order to process credit cards in the way that is standard for this industry. And we did all of that, and then we acted as a London company. And then some strange things happened to us where that company that was processing cards, after 6 months, suddenly they couldn't figure out how to pay us out to just a different bank account, a different number. And that lasted for a month and a half. They held our money, and basically we were forced to stop operations because we couldn't pay out the drivers anymore. And then I wrote a basic rant on Facebook. People told me to put it on public so everyone could see it. People shared it, and within a week we raised so much attention. We ended up on Hacker News the same day. People reacted, they wanted to help us, and within a week we solved it. And we solved it. It was my idea. I told them, why don't you pay us 2 PayPal account? We have access to that. So thankfully we had that, and we resolved it, and they
Wow, and so much issued, guys, and some guys are listening from Serbia, and you know about this or can learn from this, and for everybody else listening from around the world, where online payments are kind of standards, a given, so you can just see how much trouble can a business have from just this thing that you don't even think about in that sense. So, okay, going back to the beginnings, starting a startup has, two ways. You can either bootstrap, you can, raise an investment. Which one are you?
Well, we're the first group. So our idea is to go by the book, build something, build like an MVP. Even when it comes to our software, I wanted something basic that I could basically throw away, and once I raised more money to build it from scratch, I wanted something basic that would allow the user to order a ride, look how the car is coming to pick up, pay, and then give some feedback. So those are basic things, right? It wasn't that easy. We made it, and then on the first few rides, customer ordered, and all 10 cars that we had came to pick up one passenger. So those are the early days, and that's fun. That's the good stuff that we talk about. But basically, we haven't had a real. So we gathered some money, we put some money together, and we started development. And within 3 or 4 months, we launched without having an idea what we're going into. We weren't ready, but I wanted to kind of spread the pressure around to both the programmers and everyone else in biz dev, because all of the pressure was on me, to put everything together. So I kind of did the teamwork. Let's, we're in this together, so let's see what you guys are made of. And we were hoping that really soon we're going to get an investment, and then that's going to launch us to the stars. But that didn't happen. Even though we were close, we were even promised an investment. But since this was still a gray area, so to speak, especially in this part of the world, we didn't find a proper investor. So we tried, we scattered, we tried to get money different ways. One time we actually shut down the service because we ran out of money. An interesting fact, we sold a copy of our software in Bangladesh. Not many people know that. So then that gave us additional funds so we can restart and go back to the basics. And then just 7-8 months ago, we had our first angel round, which was a very small round, but we increased the business like 10 times since then.
And that's fantastic. So right now you mentioned you had about 8 people and about 300 drivers working for CarGo. So in the very beginning, you told me that you're a business background. So you're not a developer, you're not a driver for CarGo. Were you ever a driver? Like the first one?
One ride.
One ride, the test drive.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay, so how does someone who bootstraps and has only an idea in the business kind of background, gather developers, people, the team people, drivers? Where did the first drivers came from?
Well, friends, fools, and family. Basically, some neighbors. You got to have the hype. I think that was the basic thing. Everyone around us knew that they're not going to make money and become rich in 3 or 4 months or a year. This is not an easy task. We did gather the money to pay for some of the development of the app, but everything else had to be muscled in, basically. So a lot of hype, a lot of morale. Showing that you can do it, attitude. And we had people around us, so a small team. We started with 3 people. and they all believed that we can change something. And very soon and very fast, we got some results. We got the feedback from the market, and people loved what we were doing. Even though we only had 6 to 10 drivers a day, people were waiting for the ride for 20, 25 minutes. No problem. Even though they had to pay in advance to get the ride. And then over time, we were telling stories, basically what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish, and people liked that. They realized that we have an ambition to change the world for the better, at least our surroundings, the city of Belgrade, and then spread our service to other cities. Around that idea is where people really cared.
So we're still positive. Let's keep with the positivity, and we're gonna be positive at the end. Okay. So how, with the positive attitude, you started building a business. How did the first users accept the service? And you just mentioned, I was going to ask. So were you having too many drivers in the beginning, or too many users of the application? And how did that balance out?
Yeah. Well, that's a real tricky thing, because matching the supply and demand is one thing, but doing it in real time is a bitch. Meaning you have to really hustle, and there's no formula for this, because we can get 7 downloads per day, or we can get 250 or 1,000 if we end up in the news, which we did a few times. And then what do? Even if you had 100 drivers, it wasn't enough, because there was 1,000 people that now want to try the service. So it was tough in the beginning. Some people just waited for their opportunity when the car was nearby. They tried it, they loved it, and then, with their energy and our work and dedication, we increased the supply side slowly as the demand was coming in, and we could see it because we had PayPal in real time, so we could see what's going on, that people are really want to try it. So, but that was the hardest thing, and it still is. It still is, because 300 people in a 2 million people city, 300 drivers is nothing. We need 5,000. Friday night, it's raining or snowing, forget about it. You can't get a taxi, you can't get a CarGo, nothing. So we know, and we're following this. We learned a lot about people's needs and where they move and how they move and when they move around the city. So we're trying to use that data and increase the supply in many different ways and meet the demand.
Well, even now, 300 people don't work 24 hours a day, so that's actually not 300 people. So that's just 300 on the roster. So, do you have any issues in finding quality drivers, and how do you screen for that?
So we basically have an opening constantly, where people can sign up and come and interview. We're accepting new drivers constantly, but we believe in providing a chance to people. It turns out that 20 to 30% of people that come in and they want to work, they actually don't want to work. And secondly, they don't want to do this job. But we still give them an opportunity. To some it's a week, to some it's a month, and then we realize together that this is not what they were looking for. So we have our internal screening, some tests they need to pass, and then they're employed by one of our partner companies, or we encourage them to open up their own little shop, so they can do transportation. Everything is still electronically based, so we get paid from the customer, and on a weekly basis we pay out the drivers.
Cool. So we know that looking at worldwide, Uber had also or has issues in many countries concerning local laws, taxis associations, very big like kind of negative pushback from people who are already in transportation or the local government. So that's also an issue for you. So here in Serbia. And when you started, did you ever think that this, what we're going to talk about right now, all the issues concerning the pushback is going to happen? Were you prepared for that?
Prepared? No, not really for this kind of media attention that we got recently concerning the laws and the changing of those laws. But I kind of expected that something would happen. As long as we did what we had to do and we grow, we are basically attacking and transforming the market of people transportation within the city. And since this is an established industry, basically anywhere in the world, these startups are disrupting the establishment. And that's not going to go without, unnoticed. So we expected something similar to France or some other European countries. It would happen here, some kind of scenario where taxi drivers would block the city and demand to shut us down from the city authorities. But we kind of learned from their experience outside, and we tried to apply, whatever arguments that they put out, even here. But an average citizen can use some basic logic and say, for my money, I can choose who I want to pay to get me across town, right? So this is the only thing that we're asking for, some freedom for our citizens to choose who they want to pick to get them across town, in real time. So today, it's a sunny day, I may want to take a bike, and bike across town instead of getting a taxi or a CarGo, whatever. Our idea was to become a mobility app, so to offer 4 or 5 different types of transportation to the end user and have the same cool and best payment service that we have for our customer. So if they want to decide to take a bike or a bus, we can show it on the map and we can make it easier for them to book it or to buy a ticket. And then on the way back, if they want a taxi, why not? We will open up a taxi button and so on. But that is the goal that we're going after. But for now, it's CarGo. It's a 30 to 50% cheaper ride than a taxi, in much nicer cars, and where a driver is not going to hassle you about politics or anything.
And let's look at the different side, because we all know why the taxi drivers would be outraged. Like, you're taking money out of our mouths. Yes. You're working in a gray area. You're not registered as a I don't know, taxi company, transport company, whatever it is. From what everybody can kind of perceive, the issue or the point of view where the government may get involved is the fact on how would you, as you would say, a transportation provider or just an option. So if somebody wants to take a bike, if I go on a bike, I'm involved in traffic on my own account, so I'm responsible for myself. So in a taxi or in a bus, the bus company or the taxi association, and I know that's not the case in practice, but in some laws are kind of responsible for the consumer's right? So
Correct.
so if you buy something and you're not satisfied, so you can have your money back or be somehow protected in the eyes of the law, quote unquote, even in Serbia. So how do you from your point of business, solve that, and from what kind of argument point do you stand when the government says, but you're not a taxi company, you're not a transportation company, and how do you protect your consumers?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. We like to say that, yes, government, you're right, we're not a taxi company, and we don't want to be one. However, there is basically, for a lot of small countries, not just in Europe, but anywhere in the world, there's a common misconception that we don't have these laws, we don't have those laws. For e-commerce, yes, we are somewhat behind, and that's a fact, but we as a small company, we're pushing forward, and I think other bigger companies are now trying to follow our lead, and I'm glad to see that. When it comes to e-commerce, but when it comes to transportation, we're actually doing well. We just copied the law that I think Austria had, and there is a law that says that you can rent a car with a driver. So it's called the limo service, and it doesn't define what limo is, and we said, okay, we're going to do a limo service. We're just going to do a limo by the minute. And by the law, we did everything by the book. By the existing law, where we as an IT company are organizing and getting the payment for this limo service. So for the end user, we provide the service of connection, management of the limo service or transportation, and the payment, because payment is also an issue. You have an option to get a limo service from a regular rental car agency. You can pay in cash, you can pay by card. We said you can only pay through the app, but you have to register to become our user. So this is a private service. It's not a public service like the taxi. So taxi, you can hail on the street. You can wave him, you can whistle.
I don't have to tell him my name, I don't have to do anything.
Exactly, you can just jump in. Or you can call a random number and they give you a closest car, right? So another misconception, it's not so, the taxi company is never liable for anything that happens to you in the car. It's always the driver and his insurance. Same thing with us. All of our drivers have insurance. And most of them have their own companies. If they don't, they're working for some company. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to pay them out because of the different tax system that we have, unlike the US. So basically, the liability for anything that happens in the car is always on the driver. We make sure that every driver has insurance. That's one of the things that they have to have in order to start working within our service, but the small print says that you are booking a ride through us and you are paying for the ride to the driver, but through our system. And that way there's no point of friction or any point where you have to stop and take the cash out or anything else. So when it comes to the government, we had 6 different inspections where we really had to dissect and tell them what we do. It's unfortunate that some ministries, especially the Ministry of Transportation, still doesn't realize what we do, that we don't have a single car registered to our company name, that we only organize these rides. Just like we organized a helicopter ride to Novi Sad a few days ago.
Yeah. And how did that turn out?
Great. People loved it. And we had a little Facebook post where people put comments and likes. And one guy had 1,000 likes on his comment why he loves CarGo. And boom, he won a flight to to Exit Festival and back.
Basically, before we move on, so where are you now with all the issues with the taxis and the government? So right now the taxis are still outraged. I see that they stopped the blockation of the streets in that sense, and I hear that there are some movements on the government side, even though there was a suggestion of the law that was meant to kind of shut you down in essence.
To
outlaw, so when the government specifically designs a law to ban a business, so and you're not in kind of the old ways, or you're not prostitution, you're not crime, you're not organized crime, and so on.
Not.
So and we create a law that meant to outlaw a business.
Poor old government. It's not actually them. It was the taxi drivers that wrote the suggestion of the new law, and we found it on their blog. It wasn't public on the ministry website, but basically they're saying that the ride to a person can be given only by a licensed taxi within the city. So no other driver, professional, non-professional, no minivan can give a ride with a passenger car to a citizen. And then they say, okay, and then you have to see what the taxi guy needs to have a license, this and that. There's a limited amount of licenses by the city, so by the local government, not the national. And there's also a fixed price. So a minimum and maximum, I think it's both. You can't charge less or more. It's the taxi price, so no matter if you get a 40-year-old car, which you can in Belgrade still, for those who haven't tried, they're more than welcome. We have some old-timers here. But you can also get a new car, in a taxi, and you still pay the same price, no matter if the guy smokes in the car or if he's the nicest person ever. We wanted to change that, and our goal is to work with electric cars and to work with small cars, so they can shuffle people around the city. We have no metro in Belgrade. Still. Yes, for at least another 30 years, but we're working on that. Yeah. What we're going to do, we are trying to lobby somehow. We're not politically backed at all. And we are basically relying on the good faith of the IT community, which has a lot of say-so in Serbia, and I'm glad. First, because IT is a huge industry, and some of the smartest people that you can find in this country. And second, because their voice is really heard. So people that run the state more and more listen to what these people have to say, including us, from the IT community. So when something unfair is about to happen, we go public and we explain what's going on, and we hope for the best. That's the best thing we can do. We said we wanted to be a part of the group that is going to bring this new law about transportation. Basically what they're doing, they're changing the law of tourism and the law of transportation. Two laws just because of one company with 300 drivers. It seems kind of incredible, but maybe they're doing it because some bigger company wants to come in. I don't know. We're gonna do our best to change the law for the better for everyone, and to have some leeway with who can give you a ride. It doesn't have to be a licensed driver with 50 years of experience. I don't care. It's a 3-mile ride or 4 kilometers across town. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, which, by the way, we have one that's driving for us.
And then people used to hitchhike, all the time. So this is just digital hitchhiking. Yeah. So in all these, you just numbered in a very small amount of years so many obstacles that most people don't have in 10 years. So,
That's true.
and
Yes.
kind of life-threatening business shutting obstacles on every kind of corner. And in all this, you're still so positive that everything's going to be work out, you know.
We believe in miracles. We're the underdog. We're the Cinderella story all in one.
So how do you manage that? So where does Vuk take its energy from?
Well, some are from within, somewhere from deep in, I guess. It also has to do something with the stars. I think I'm a strong believer in astrology, especially lately. There's something that drives me, even when all else fails or when everyone else fails. We shut down the business 3 times so far, and then we found a way, and we're now profitable. You know, a small company out of Serbia doing ride sharing with no investment, profitable. So I think that's a miracle in itself. It's tough. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I keep saying this because, especially in this part of the world, I think that, and I talked about this in some universities where I was holding some presentation. We have a different background than people in the West, because here you had communism, right? And then you had socialism, and then you had a World War II. People were thought, think of 2 generations, just 2 generations before us. People were thought that everyone is equal. Radio ne radio, svirati radio. So working or not, you're gonna get paid. Just finish school, you're gonna get a job, you're gonna get an apartment, and the state is gonna help you. And that was all fine. It worked. Basically, everyone had to be a part of the system, but the system took care of you. Then we had, fast forward, 20, 30 years, a shift, a war, inflation, chaos, and then all of a sudden we're going into a free market economy, and we're trying in transition. It's tough. You have to teach people to start paying online. You have to teach people to try new things, not to rely on the safe job and a regular salary. For me, since I had all this life experience for 10 years that I lived abroad, I've seen how the world works. And I was not afraid to quit my job and start something on my own. Basically, jump off the cliff and grow some wings on the way down. Because, the risk is not that big when you really look at it. Yes, that there's an opportunity risk. I could have been making a decent salary doing something else. That's true. But the upside of being an entrepreneur and doing it in Serbia, I think has sometimes, in some cases, more upside than doing it in the States, because the system already works. There's a startup. Oh yeah, you have this idea? Fine. Look at these 5 people who already failed. They had this startup or an idea. I think the biggest difference between the Western civilization and us here, that can really be described in business as well, is that people in the West are willing to try more, and the system, when I say system, meaning the environment and the government, wants you to try more. Even if you fail, you try again. So then you try again. Whereas here, if you fail, you're a fucking loser, and people feel bad for you. They wanna pet you, I don't need pity, that's the last thing I need. Even when we shut down the business, people are saying, yeah, it's okay, don't worry about it. You can get a regular job now. You have a decent CV.
You can now get a regular job. Stop playing.
Yeah, you can be just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Don't worry. And I understand, because some people, including some people in my vicinity, have never been or would never do something like this, especially in the crazy industry of crazy taxi drivers in Belgrade. They would not go against that kind of machinery. For me, it was something like, hey, let's try it, and then, okay, here's a result. We're doing something right. Why don't we start, continue building? Who knows what's going to happen? I believe in great stories. Maybe I lived in the States for too long, but I believe that everyone has a chance, no matter where you are. Even the gentleman that we sold the software in Bangladesh, he also had a chance, but he never decided to start. He was there. There was no competition. There's no Uber, and there's, I don't know, 20 million people in a city that's 3 times smaller than Belgrade. So everyone has a chance. You got to try and you got to try over and over.
I do believe, and I want to expand on this, that what you said, jump off a cliff, grow the wings on the way down. That is, I also tell to everybody, not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is hard, and you have to work on yourself, and most people don't want to work. So even when we get to the small percentage of people who want to work,
yes,
in the sense to work on a job, because I know so many people that don't even want to work in a job. I just want to have a job, get paid. If
yes,
I can do as little as
yes,
work as possible, it's going to be fine. But to want to work, and to want to work on yourself when you don't have stuff to do,
yes,
is kind of the turning point for
yes,
an entrepreneur. Wanting to, when you work on yourself, then you see the opportunities that you can risk. If I jump here and I want to work on myself, I can risk it because I'm going to grow into this. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get new skills.
Exactly.
Even if I don't have them right now.
I agree. You're 100% right. Plus, let's not forget the team. If you stay motivated, which is, I think, the crucial point, you have to be motivated. You have to love what you do. You have to be passionate about it, meaning that when everyone else wants to go home, you're out there on the court trying to shoot threes and make them, But if you're with a team, and I was lucky, I had a pretty good team that helped me pull through even the toughest times. Interesting fact, last time we jump-started the service, we had no employees. Not a single programmer, not a single employee. I was working 2 jobs, so and I funded the restart out of my own pocket. Imagine running an IT company without anyone looking over the software. Not saying that the software was great, but it worked. It worked because we turned it on. I told my ex-programmer, turn it on and let's see what happens. And we invested in marketing again. So. My point is, you got to have the good team to follow. If the idea is going to be big and it's going to change the status quo, you always need a team, unless you're playing some individual sport. But in that case, you also need a team to follow you. Otherwise, you go crazy. You loop around your own head.
Yeah.
So that's a very important piece.
Well, entrepreneurs are often leaders, and they learn, or they are inherit leaders, so they can inspire people around them, either by motivation or to motivate them to work. So we're getting to the end of the interview right now, and the final question is: since this is a worldwide show, Backwater Entrepreneur, targeting the global market anywhere from anywhere in the world, so. With all of the experiences of going through brick walls yes. and hand straight, what would be your advice for entrepreneurs who find themselves in front of a wall over and over again?
First, look how big is the wall. and then how to climb it, how to get over it, or run through it, and then decide what's the best strategy. But definitely not give up on the first take, because no matter how big the issue is, we don't like to call them problems, maybe some issues. There's always some kind of solution, either the solution will come from the other side of the wall or from this side, but from some parts of your team. It's important to keep pushing, and then to find a way to resolve. I think that the endurance is a big part of the entrepreneurship. So you have to stay motivated, but you have to go to work. It's not going to come. That's I would say the biggest difference is, maybe I'm not going to go to work today, or I might just sleep in. The work is not going to get done. My wife tells me, but why can't you come home earlier? I can, but I have to leave early in the morning then, because if I don't show up, my part of the work is not going to be done by anyone else. We're a small team, and yes, everyone is dedicated to a few things, but basically you have to do the work.
And that's a fantastic point. So finishing this off, guys, if you're listening to this and if you see now Vuk, having issues from the competition, calling them taxi drivers, and even the government trying to shut him down, I don't want to hear you bitching about, any of other smaller problems you may think you have in your entrepreneurships. So Vuk, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. And guys, I'll see you on the next episode of The Backwater Entrepreneur.